Hello again, everybody. It's your old pal Guardian Enzo coming to you as always live on tape from beautiful Kyoto, Japan, where spring has sprung, except it still feels like winter out there. It's chilly, but I'm not going to complain because I know what it's going to be like here in a couple months, and I'd be praying for colder than normal weather. So that's okay with me. It's spring preview time, spring 26 preview time here at Lost in Anime, both on the website and the YouTube channel where presumably you're watching this. And I want to thank you as always for tuning in. It's another preview. It's number 60, I believe, for Lost in Anime and me. So you can do the math and figure out how long that means I've been doing this because I sure as hell don't want to do it. I can do it, but I don't want to do it. Um, and it's a big season. Spring, historically, spring and fall are the big seasons in anime in terms of number of shows. It's not as true as it used to be, but this spring in particular is, by my count, 69 shows. If we include the ONAs, which is a ridiculous number. Of those, I'm previewing 21. As longtime LIA followers will know, I've tended historically to uh, preview about a third, so I'm below that percentage this season. And I frankly had to go in because on my first pass through, I noticed I was previewing a very low percentage, so I added a few shows there at the end to bring the number up a little bit. But uh, so 21 shows in a preview is a lot, but when you consider 69 shows on the schedule and that I had to be pretty liberal to get to that number, it's not quite so many. A few themes this season, I would say, other than just sheer bigness, 69 shows. It's a season of big time directors. There's a lot of big time directors working this season, and a lot of big time directors doing adaptations of big time manga, often by big time mangaka. So we have a lot of big names on the schedule this season. It's also, I would say, the season of Samu, my co-host on the podcast, which I hope you're a listener of. My taste is better than yours. He has like 4 or 5 manga he's a big fan of that are airing this season, which is going to put a test of his resolve to be basically on an anime boycott. Although nothing official, he doesn't watch much anime these days. This season, I suspect, will put him to the test. And thematically, not really. I don't think anything stands out too much in terms of this season, other than the fact that we've got 24 light novel adaptations, which is by percentage, 35%, more than 35%. That's a lot. It does reduce the pool of available shows. It's not that I never find LN adaptations followable, but it does reduce the likelihood that I'm going to find shows to follow this season because, generally speaking, my batting average with light novel adaptations is extremely low. The usual caveat I give you when we start these things, go to the website lostinanime.com for a more comprehensive look at the whole schedule, at least the 25 shows and one OVA that I'm previewing of it. And this video version of it more for detail as we go into a little bit more grind under the hood of some of the shows I'm following in a little more detail without touching on each and every one of them. So, on that note, let's jump right into spring 2026. And we'll jump right in with Yomi no Tsugai, which is my top pick of the season, even though actually I have not read more than a chapter of the two of the manga. And there are basically 3 reasons why. Reason 1, Arakawa Hiromu. Reason 2, Ando Masahiro. And reason 3, Bones. Mangaka, director, studio. And those are 3 pretty damn good reasons. Arakawa, I'm sure most of you know, is one of the big names in manga, Gin no Saji, Full Metal Alchemist, among others. Yomi no Tsugai has been her project for the last few years. It's one both Samu and I have kind of danced around as a potential next big thing candidate, and I think it should be interesting to see. It's already it's a very good seller in manga form. Um, will this anime lift it to kaiju status? Probably not, but it will. It should get a bump because it's a Bones series, and Bones typically does a pretty high standard, high quality Lots of Sakuga adaptation, and I'm sure they'll do the same here. And Ando Masahiro, of course, director of many well-known anime and manga, including theatrically, often but not always for Bones. Sword of the Stranger is one that he's well known for. Um, very good. Tetsuo no Tempest, another one he did. He's really an outstanding director. Arakawa is an extremely important mangaka with both a good commercial and critical track record, and it's Bones, who are generally at or near the top of the ladder. So, for those three reasons, Yomi no Tsugai does go down as my top pick of the season, even though I have not read much of the manga. The story is it's kind of like it looks superficially like a traditional fantasy, but it's actually sort of post-apocalyptic, and there's some sci-fi elements too. And there's two twins, one of whom may not be who they originally appear to be. And again, it's kind of modern and pre-industrial fantasy mixed in an interesting way. Really looking forward to this. It does have a fair amount of action based on the little of it I've read, so Bones is certainly going to have an opportunity to flex. But it's not, Arakawa is not a battle shonen mangaka, in my opinion. She does have battles in her shonen, but she's character driven. This is a pretty character driven. Even some battle shonen are character driven, but even compared to those, I think she tends to be more character driven. Even on something like Full Metal Alchemist, I would say. So that's my top pick of the season. The other notable thing about this season, I would say, is that I'm only really closely following one sequel, which is an extremely low number for me. Maybe the lowest number of sequels I've ever been following in a season. In fact, since I've been blogging, I wouldn't absolutely swear to that, but it's a very low number. And of course, one thing that does is it increases the uncertainty factor for me, because I have much less of a firm expectation of what these shows are going to be. The one sequel I am following is Mairimashita Iruma-kun fourth season, and Iruma-kun, 3 seasons covering them. Only one of them has made my top 10, but the other two didn't miss by much, especially season 1. I really have an enormous amount of affection for Iruma-kun. I think it's really a wonderful manga, very charming. Tends to be at its best when it doesn't bog too deeply into big, plot-driven, long arcs, in my opinion, although it can do very well with those. Nishi Osamu, the mangaka here, is definitely living her best life. She has her spin-off series, chapter of Mafia, is getting an anime this year. Episode of Mafia, excuse me, chapter getting a anime this year. She co-authors that, and she also co-authors, of course, Madan no Ichi the Witch. She does the writing for that, which is the series I picked as my next big thing, and that's going to get an anime adaptation probably announced sometime in 2026, and that has a chance to be really huge too. So big year for her, much deserved. She's very talented. So Iruma-kun fourth season, I have not read that far in the manga, but I have no reason to suspect it won't continue to be quite charming. Probably dancing around the edge of the top 10 list at the end of the year, as Iruma-kun usually does. And the last show in my highest expectations category, of which I only have 3 this season, which is not terrible. It's probably about average, but maybe in a season with 69 shows, it's not so great. But anyway, the third one is Koori no Jouheki, and it's another mangaka who's having a big year, who is Agasawa Kocha, who also wrote Seihante na Kimi to Boku. You and I are polar opposites. This series is localized as The Ramparts of Ice. And both of them are finished manga. Both of them are high school settings. Neither one of them can be fully adapted in one core, which is all that has been announced for either. So it's very interesting to see. I don't know what's going to happen with Seihante. That has been very well received. Maybe that'll get a second season. It's not entirely impossible. Don't know what's going to happen with Koori no Jouheki. That's 14 volumes. That absolutely could not be done in a single core. The big thing here is that Polar Opposites is a shonen, and Ramparts of Ice is a shoujo, which is interesting. We have mangaka cross over demographically fairly often, although shonen and shojo is not the most common, I would say, but it's not unicorn rare. But it's so we have two series, and it'll be interesting with them airing one right after the other. It'll be interesting to see how her how her work plays differently thematically, etc. Going from a shonen to a shojo. This one is about a kind of a loner girl and her three friends, two of which are boys, two of which are girls. You get the feeling that this is more of a less of an overt romance than Polar Opposites is. Although with two boys and two girls as the lead characters, it's hard to imagine romance is not going to be a significant portion of the story. As you can imagine from my tone here, I have not read any of this manga, but it like Seihantai is very very well regarded. I don't see a great tidal wave of opinion that one is better than the other. So, assuming that the adaptation doesn't screw the pooch, I would imagine that I'm going to like Koori no Jouheki as much or close as Seihantai. Speaking of which, we have a different studio here, Studio Kai, different director. No commonalities as far as I can tell with Seihantai, the adaptation. And there was really nothing in the adaptation in the staff list for Seihantai that tipped that off as being something outstanding, and it turned out to be outstanding. So that may very well be the case here as well. We hope so. So those are my three top expectations, highest expectation shows for spring. And then we have the mid table, which is the strength of this spring 2026 schedule, I would say, at least the preview. I've had what I've described as hourglass shaped seasons before, where most of the interest was kind of a few shows at the top and a bunch at the bottom. This season is the opposite, maybe gourd shaped. I don't know what that would be, but the mid table is definitely the most prominent portion of this schedule. It's where all the Samu shows, as you might call them, are clustered as well. Although we start out with Kami no Shizuku, the Drops of God, which it's probably no exaggeration to say is one of the most revered seinen of the 21st century. Really extremely popular series, 44 volumes, two live action adaptations already, but never an anime up until now. And it's a story about two half brothers searching for the 12 apostles of wine, which they have to be the first one to find in order to inherit their father's riches and presumably his wine collection. Um, it's pretty much won most of the major manga awards that are out there to win and has been recognized by the government of France, which, given the theme, is not too surprising. Uh, not given that it's a seinen, it's extremely well regarded. It's wine, which is a passion of mine. It should be higher ranking in my personal rankings, but the problem is it's only getting 24 episodes. I would be surprised if it gets more than that. And 44 volumes, woof. I mean, right from the beginning, the elephant in the room with the series was always episode count, with a 44 volume decades old seinen unlikely to get a full adaptation. So we'll see what happens if they can do something, elegant out of that story of 44 volumes and 24 episodes. They deserve every award that you can give for anime, that is. So we'll see. I hope for the best. Satellite and a staff without a lot of big names. Again, I wish I could be higher on this series than I am, but that's about where I am with it. Tongari Boshi no Atelier, Witch Hat, Atelier of Witch Hat. Well, we've got a couple big things here. Obviously, the manga is very popular. It has a great director, Watanabe Ayumu, who may very well be the top director in TV anime, who is in fact directing two series this season in this and Akane-banashi. And he's directed two shows that have aired in the same season before. He did that with Nazu no Kanojo X and Uchu Kyodai. The thing is that this adaptation, Atelier of Witch Hat, has reportedly had an extremely cluster frick production schedule. It's been delayed a couple times already. It was originally supposed to be out last year. So who knows what's going on with that? The other thing I would say is that I'm not a huge fan of the manga. Uh, the mangaka is Shirahama Kamome, and I fully acknowledge is a wonderful artist. I mean, everything about the visual side of this series is really striking. The backgrounds, the paneling, the character designs. It's visually it's one of the most interesting and one of the most impressive manga there is. I just don't personally happen to find the writing to be all that grabby. I think the characters are pretty superficial. There's some moe pandering. It's kind of a stock cute girls doing cute things series, kind of a stock Magic Academy series for me. But I haven't read that much of it, so maybe it gets better. And the other thing I will say is, assuming that the production isn't too bollocksed up, you would figure anything there is in there, Watanabe is going to find it. So I would say a huge range of outcomes with this in terms of quality, but definitely a high interest level. For me, I rank it slightly above Watanabe's other spring series, Akane-banashi, which is a likewise very popular manga, a weekly Shonen Jump series. This one I've read cover to cover. I've read every chapter up to date. It's I think Samu recognized it as his top running manga, if I'm not mistaken. I think he picked it as his number one currently running manga. Um, this one has not had any particular uh, reports of production difficulties, and again, it's a weekly Jump adaptation, and it's not at Mappa. You would expect that to go fairly smoothly, and apparently, I would be surprised if there was a ton of overlap in the production of this and Atelier. He was probably working on them mostly at different times. Um, I don't love Akane-banashi. I think it's pretty good. It's a series about a young woman whose father is an aspiring mangaka. There's an incident. She decides to become a mangaka, Rakugauka. Going aside, Rakugauka. It's about Rakugo. She decides to become a Rakugauka because basically, as in a revenge quest for what happened to her dad. Although she loves Rakugo too. I'm a big Rakugo fan. I like Rakugo. I think it's very, very interesting. The Rakugo side of the series, and of course, the mangaka does have a Rakugauka as an advisor, and it's the Rakugo is quite good. And I would think with Watanabe directing, they're going to do some really, really fun things with the performance pieces here. So that alone, I think, should lift the anime above the manga for me. My issues with the manga are that I don't find the character writing to be that interesting. I find the protagonist to be a Mary Sue. I get kind of tired of everyone raving every chapter about, oh, isn't that kind of great? She's so wonderful. She's so wonderful. She's so great. She wins everything. I'm bored with her, frankly. Sorry, Samu. Um, I don't dislike her. I just don't find her interesting, particularly. There are some interesting supporting characters and some interesting subplots, but they don't get a lot of love from the mangaka. They tend to just get kind of short little 2 or 3 episode intercuts, and then we go back to Akane and how great she is. So I again, my feeling for me is Watanabe will get everything there is out of a kind of big Banashi that there is to get out of it, much as he will with Witch Hat. Um, I I have a roughly similar opinion of both manga, which is like don't love. However, because I know this manga much better than I know Witch Hat, I think Witch Hat has more upside for me because hey, maybe it just gets a lot better after I stopped reading it. I know that didn't happen with Akane-banashi. Next in this category is another Samu special, Ganbare Nakamura-kun, which is a rom-com about male rom-com, which you sometimes see categorized as shonen ai, which is a genre tag you hardly ever see anymore. I think it's great. We have a rom com focusing on same sex romance that apparently, from what I hear, is not bogged down in the usual tropes of the boys love genre. I hear good things about this. It's also only 11 chapters and 2 volumes, so obviously with a core, they had plenty of time to do that. It's got a solid director. Drive is a solid studio. I think Ganbare Nakamura-kun, which was also delayed from 2025, by the way, I think that one has a chance to be pretty good, and I would expect it to be pretty good. When we come to another of those big name mangaka, and they don't get much bigger than Takahashi Rumiko, whose Mao is a series that's being adapted this season. It's 27 volumes. It's been announced for 2 cours. We'll see where they go with that. The interesting thing about the Mao adaptation really is that it was announced in 2020. So it's been more than 5 years from the adaptation announcement until the actual premiere. It's not one of her best. It's not one of her best performing commercial or critical series, but let's be honest. Like Adachi, Rumiko is, she's past the peak of her commercial powers at this point. And in fact, in some ways, I kind of view Mao as her mix, a series that's, representative of the style later in the career, more of a middling commercial success than an overpowering one. But they even both have Kajiyuki cast as the male lead. Yay. So you will see. This is Sunrise, which is the same studio that, of course, did Inuyasha. And in fact, it has the same director, Sato Teruo, who directed the Inuyasha sequel that came out a few years ago, which was horrible. But in my view, the reason it was horrible is not so much the director, it was just the writing, and Rumiko didn't write it. So I'm not too worried about that. It is sort of ironic, though, that Sunrise is doing both, because the premise here is a girl named Nanaka goes through a portal to the Taisho era. She meets the title character, in this case, an exorcist rather than a Hanyu. And he has a cursed sword, and there are some very Inuyasha-esque elements in the premise. It does sound a bit almost like an Inuyasha sequel, but unlike Mix, it's not a direct sequel. It just sounds like it. So it's Rumiko. It has a good, solid staff. I suspect this will be quite good without having sky-high expectations for it. Then we have yet another Samu special, Marriagetoxin. And this one is Bones Film. This is a series about the scion of a centuries-old clan of poison-wielding assassins, and they now have sort of fallen under the umbrella of the Yakuza. And he's not interested in romance or marriage, but his younger sister is ordered to bear an heir in order to keep their bloodline alive. So to spare her from that, he proposes to someone known as a marriage swindler, who is also his current target to be assassinated. So I don't know what to make of that premise, but it is weird enough to have some interest. It is Bones, which certainly helps. And the fact that Samu likes this series quite a bit and has picked it as one that has some upside potential commercially makes it one that I want to keep an eye on. Then we have basically my two sleepers of the season, the first of which is Kujima Utaeba Ie Hororo, which is an adaptation of a shonen manga. It's about a middle schooler who meets the title creature, who comes from Russia. Hello, Golden Kamui. Almost looks like a Poon-like character, a bird. And he moves in with the family, and he gets involved in family problems, including the title character's brother, who's failed his entrance exams. I sort of have the feeling that it's 5 volumes, it's completed. It should be a great for a core. I just get a gut feeling this is going to be quite good. I have a feeling it's going to push my buttons. It has a couple. It could be in that niche category. You guys know what that niche is by now. I don't know. I just have a feeling this is going to be a good one. Definitely my top sleeper of the season. And my other sleeper is one I have a harder time justifying as a sleeper, but it is Kiro Fanclub, which is a rom-com. This is not a great season for rom-coms. But this is a rom-com about 2 girls who are friends, but who are also standing the same guy, who is Kiro, as thus the title. There's nothing in its Satellite, who's not a great studio, generally speaking. They're also doing Drops of God. Nothing in the staff, nobody in the staff that screams upside. I just have a feeling, I don't know why, that this is going to be better than a stock rom-com. I just have a feeling this is going to be pretty good. We'll see. But it is my second sleeper pick for the season. And I have a sort of semi-third sleeper pick, which I'll get into in a minute. But let's jump down to Modestly Interested before this goes on too long. And as usual, I'm not gonna touch base on every show in Modestly Interested, but we'll come through some highlights of the category. Half the schedule, just about 10 out of 21, is Modestly Interested this season, which is not too far off from where we usually are. Awajima Hyakkei, Madhouse, which is interesting. Also, it's Shimura Takako, which is interesting. I love Horo Musuko, as you know. But it's I haven't loved anything else she's written. I've read some of this. I don't think there's a lot to it. It's about some girls going to a music school on Awajima, which is the island which is just across the water from Kobe, on the other side of the Akashi Bridge. In fact, so where I used to live, I could see Awajima practically from my apartment. So I don't know. Because of the Madhouse connection and Shimura, I'll certainly give it a shot. Maybe I just was in a bad mood when I was reading the manga or something, but I don't have high expectations for this. Liar Game, another seinen that people really seem to love, another Madhouse show. There you go. Kaitani Shinobu. The thing about this one is he is also the mangaka of a baseball series, if you can call it that, called One Outs, which also had an adaptation directed by the same guy, Sato Yuzo, excuse me. And I hated One Outs. I really hated it. So because I hated it, did I mention I hated it? So because I hated it, I'm kind of not expecting to like Liar Game, but I know a lot of people like Liar Game, so hey, we'll give it a shot. Then we have what I would say are the three deep sleepers, which I'm going to put in as like the field contender for deep sleeper. Aishiteru game wa Owarasetai. I Want to Stop This Love Game, about two high school kids who are childhood friends who have played a game since they were in elementary school of embarrassing each other with lovey-dovey talk. And now they're both feeling something quite different. Then we have Ponkotsu Fuuki Into Skirt Take ga It's too long. I'm not going to say it all. And is this about a morals committee member in high school and a bad girl who wears a skirt that's too short? And then we have Otaku ni Yasashii gal wa Inai, Girls Can't Be Nice to Otaku, which is about an unlikely friendship or maybe romance between an otaku and a gal, which forms because they both like the same anime. And in fact, she corrects him for something he says about it, which is wrong. So interesting. That's interesting. Those three are, none of which individually I think qualifies as a sleeper, but I'm going to group them together and say of the three of them, I have a feeling one of them might turn out to be pretty good. Then another interesting one here is Hyakki Yakoushou, which is another of these decades-old shoujo series that anime has decided they love to adapt. I know people... The funny thing about this one is, even though it premiered 31 years ago, it's actually still being serialized. And it has quite a good reputation, I know a lot of people really like it. It's about a young man who has like an Esper quality, sixth sense, and his yokai guardian, and it seems to be kind of like a mystery of the week thing, supernatural mystery of the week. And it, with a different studio and staff, it might be much higher on my list, but the previews look minimally animated. It almost looks like it could be one of those animated comic series, if you know what I mean. Like that Richard III thing that JC Staff did a couple years ago. So just the visuals, the overall production on this, I'm expecting something pretty grisly. But the manga itself has a great reputation, just to be fair. And that's, there's some other stuff in here. Dandelion, a Netflix show. But yeah, that's that's an original by the mangaka from Gintama, which is why that one is kind of interesting. In fact, by the time you hear this, that may already be out because Netflix has only said April premiere on that. So that's pretty much it for the modestly interested category. I've got other stuff in there, some other shows I talk about. You can read that in the written preview if you choose to do so. And finally, The will definitely blog category is Yumi no Tsugai, Mairimashita Iruma-kun for Kore no Jouheki and Akane-banashi. But there's 8 shows in the mid-table and a couple of, I think, pretty solid sleepers in there, especially Kujima. So I'm going to end up blogging more than 4 shows. I always do end up blogging more than I definitely will, but that could double easily, I would say. The sleepers, as I've said, are Kujima, Utaeba, Ie Hororo is my top sleeper, but also Kiro Fanclub. And then the sleeper, the deep sleeper field entry from the rom-com category. There's one OVA this season, which is unusual lately. We hardly ever get an OVA, but I am going to talk about one this time, which is Boku no Hero Academia More, which is coming out early May 2nd. And, the deal with this is a couple months after the end of Boku no Hero Academia in Weekly Jump, Horikoshi Sensei came out with this extra chapter in the volume version, which we kind of knew he was going to do. We knew he was going to do some sort of an epilogue chapter, and in fact, he did. So I won't spoil anything about this epilogue chapter. It's technically chapter 431, as is often the case with these epilogue chapters, which don't immediately follow the end of the manga. People will debate, well, is 430 the true end? Is 431 the true end? You can watch the OVA and decide for yourself if you haven't read it. I personally think this is the true end, but everyone can decide for themselves. And I like this extra chapter, so I think it should be a very good OVA, and I think it leaves the series in a pretty good place. Nothing on the theatrical. By the way, I should also say theoretically that there may be another original movie or something. Who knows? But that is theoretically, apart from Vigilante, that will be the last anime entry for Boku no Hero Academia, which is a bittersweet moment, generally and certainly for LIA and for me, since that's the series I've blogged more than any other. Vigilante will hopefully still get at least a 3rd season to finish up, and it may need 4, but that should be it for the original series, for the parent series. So kind of a a seminal moment for anime that Boku no Hero Academia finally rides off into the distance, and we await what Horikoshi will do next. So who knows what that might be, but I'm glad he seems to be taking some time off. Theatrical is a big squat bupkis this season. There's absolutely nothing in theatrical. There are some big name franchises that have theatrical movies coming out, but nothing that I like really enough, nothing I'm interested in enough to cover. And summer or winter will typically be bigger for theatrical anime, so I'm not going to be surprised if that turns out to be the case again. But anyway, if you can check Mal or anime list, any list or whatever you like, there are some movies out there that will get some attention, but nothing that's getting too much of mine. And that, friends, is the spring 2026 season preview. First thing I want to do is thank everyone who listens, everyone who reads, everyone who watches, of course, everyone who comments and looks at the website, and most of all, of course, my wonderful patrons and financial supporters. I'm just going to throw this out there. You may or may not have heard this, but Patreon is being forced by Apple to switch over to a system where basically they're getting rid of the pledge by the creation. It's going to be only a flat monthly pledge system. So that change is not going to happen immediately. And those of you who are or are thinking of being Patreon patrons, I will communicate with you directly on this multiple times before the changeover happens, which is not going to be for a little bit. But I just throwing it out there. Be aware of it. It's going to happen. And other than that, just sincere thank you to all of my readers and viewers and followers out there. Hope you guys have a great spring. Hope spring turns out to be a great season. You never know. Hope spring's eternal. And I'll be seeing you on the podcast and seeing you for the summer preview in a few months. Hope you guys have a great spring. And as always, you know where it's coming. Be prepared. Stay frosty.